Hala Elghawi. She's the information and cybersecurity. Sorry, the topic she's talking about is information and cybersecurity risk in the changing business landscape for financial markets. So a little bit about Hala. Hala has more than 13 years of experience in the banking industry and follows her passion in risk management, controls, information security, technology, business continuity management, and IT governance. She holds several professional certifications such as PMP, ISO 27001, Lead Implementer, COBIT Foundation, COBIT Implementation, and a diploma in risk management. Currently, Hala is working as a cluster information security senior manager for MENAP countries at Standard Chartered Bank. Recently, she published an article about COVID-19 and cyber risks on Global CIO Forum, and it got featured in May 2020. So, Hala, over to you. Any issues with your screen share? Can I help you out?
Thank you. I'm just trying actually to open my presentation. I cannot find it.
Okay.
Just a minute, sorry.
No problem. Yes, I think, no, it just went off again.
Yeah.
Can I help you out with something?
Yes, actually, I cannot find the application.
Okay, then maybe just share your screen then and just switch to the tab.
Okay, can you see my presentation now?
Not yet. No, it's not. It came up and then it went off again.
I think now. Now, can you share it?
Yeah.
Can you see it?
Yep, I can see it. So now over to you. Stage is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Aditya, for the introduction, and hello, everyone, and thanks for joining today's session. Today, I'm going to speak about information and cybersecurity risk in changing business landscape for banking industry. Banking and the financial institutions industries. Let me give you some background about this topic, actually, about the cyber risk in this era. Cyber risk is already a huge challenge, and it's growing exponentially. And the world will need to apply cyber defense 50 times more than a previous year, let's say. And with the new risk emerging daily, organization must constantly adopt new cyber strategies and defenses as attackers are figuring out how to get past cybersecurity threats in current in current place. For all organizations from all different industries and sizes and shapes, no longer a question of if you will be attacked, but the question here is will be when we will be attacked and how we are going to be attacked. The digital revolution is happening, and there is nothing you can do to stop it. Previously, some organizations were thinking how they can adopt and innovate and apply some new technologies. But now I believe all organizations enforced to move to new technologies and digital channels and technologies. And as we can see from the COVID-19 situation, where all organizations found themselves that they want to adopt remote working and to apply remote controls, and to conduct the assessment related to the information and the cybersecurity. The cyber risk is recognized as one of the top commercial risks, alongside with economy and environmental and geopolitics risks. So most of organizations in financial institutions, industry, and including banking industry, it's giving more attention to the cyber risk and how to implement the required controls. Also, we can see that some of, or not some actually, most of regulators now, they are setting the regulations about cybersecurity and the cloud computing, remote working, required controls, new frameworks that needs to apply for cybersecurity. Digital technologies and innovations are growing exponentially, as we can see, and accelerating cyber risks, creating new attacks, vendors, and greatly expanding the attacks surface that organization must defend and apply several controls actually to defend the cyber risk. Also, we need to implement controls, monitoring controls for the cyber threats, and to react in a good manner. Also, it's very good to assess our businesses and risks. Some of financial institutions found themselves that they moved their operations from the regular operations or normal operations to new digitalized operations and innovated operations, which is actually embedding some cyber risk controls that needs to be assessed. Also, we need to implement the appropriate controls and level of controls against each of them. Also, all businesses, they need to be aware that a new adoption for a new technologies, it may contain some threats related to the cyber security, and they need to be aware about those risks and to implement the required controls so they do not disturb their businesses. Actually, in this slide, I'm talking about a changing business landscape where most firms still rely heavily on traditional technologies. Like for this pandemic situation, we found some organizations, they stuck and they faced some challenges to adopt to the change, which has been required by COVID-19. Where they found themselves that they need to move some desktops from the office to the homes. Sometimes they closed their businesses because they could not move to work remotely because they were not ready, like they do not have a VPN connection, they cannot connect to their applications and infrastructures. Where they found themselves that they need to work quickly to adapt to this change. They recognize that the change is needed and they need to go to digital and to transform their processes and controls as well. Also, IT investment prioritizations got confused where each, let's say, IT manager was setting a plan to adopt some technologies or to enhance their infrastructures or to help applying new systems to their organizations, where they found themselves that they are required to maintain a different budget and investments for the IT security. And to secure their networks, like to implement network segmentation or to add the capacity for the VPN connections, because most of employees they moved to work remotely instead of go to work from the offices. Also, some organizations faced some challenges related to source constraints, resources constraints, and here we are talking about different resources, human resources, and technology resources as well, and the capabilities. Social engineering, spear phishing attacks, where we found increased in the social engineering and spear phishing attacks, and financial institution companies always were targeted from the hackers because they are having money, and they can pay like for ransom, or they can, let's say, they can steal their data. Also, they can do some fraud actions against those organizations. Now we found a paradigm shifts in the cyber landscape. The rise of remote working, as I discussed earlier, with pandemic situation, we found ourselves that all organizations, they need to move to the remote working and working from home, working from different countries. And this is actually, it's not easy to adapt unless we are having the required controls and security controls, actually. And this needs to be assessed, because we, at the end, we don't want to stop the businesses, and we need to continue working and operating. So we found ourselves that we need to implement a solid security controls, and we need to assess our processes and to assess our threats, and found a solution that can enable us to work remotely. Okay, and this is also, we found that there is a need for changing the operations processes, like some of processes were mandating, let's say, a wet ink signature from the client or from a specific authorized employees to sign on specific documents. Then we found that we need now to go to the e-signature and to be secured e-signature. And we need to take a certificate to issue those signatures to our clients and to our authorized employees to sign on those papers. And this is also one example. It's not the full example. Also, we are having evolving hybrid and multi-cloud environment. We found that some organizations found themselves that they are required to move to the cloud, and previously maybe they were not thinking about moving to cloud, and then they found themselves that there is a need to move to the cloud, and they need to select the proper cloud environment. And of course, before going to a cloud, we need to assess the applications and the data that will be available or shared on the cloud environment. Because the rise of cloud computing actually giving some benefits to the businesses, like to lower their cost and to focus on their activities and reduce the efforts and the efforts that they spend on managing IT infrastructure, IT applications, and all these things. So the business partners, they are pushing sometimes to move to the cloud, while we are having the risk like lack of governance and oversight of the cloud, over the cloud IT infrastructure, applications, databases, also privacy and security. Also, this might embed some increase in risk to regulatory non-compliance and third-party supplier and outsourcing, where before we selecting the cloud provider, we need to assess our providers and to choose the best provider who provide us with the required controls, like how they are dealing with incident management in case incident occurred. We will be allowed to capture some logs from the incident. Can we investigate the issue, or they will investigate it by themselves? When they can capture the threats and initiate an incident and incident response plan, how we will be involved in reacting to any incident, when we will be notified actually in the incidents, and what is the rating for each incident. All these things need to be taken into consideration before we are selecting the cloud provider and signing the contract with them. Also, the role of new age technologies in building the control layers, where we need to implement some controls on the application layers and the network layer or database, like if we want to implement multi-factor authentication for which applications or for accessing the network. And there is a need actually to implement those controls, which needs to be assessed. And also this will require some budget and investment to be added, where some organizations found themselves that they did not prioritize those investments to implement the required control, but at the end they found themselves that in front of the regulator they are mandated to implement those controls. Also understand the new threats due to the adoption of new age technologies. It's very, very important, because if we are talking about APIs, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, cloud computing, all these things need to be assessed properly. And to be aware about it. Also, employees need to be involved from all sides, like from the business. They need to come and understand what data that might be shared, how the process it will be worked. Also, from a cybersecurity perspective, we need to identify the threats, how the system is running, what is the privacy issues that we might face, what controls that needs to be implemented, what regulatory requirements are required also to be adopted before we are adopting any new technologies. Now moving to the next slide, how to move to the next level security. First thing, we need to keep focus on the secure, where embed cybersecurity on everything from the beginning. Like if we are talking about applications, we need to make sure we are developing applications in a secure manner, and all security controls needs to be implemented. Develop better ways to manage data, and we need to understand what data that is being shared, what is the data flow in the application, where it's being stored, who can access to that data, is data required to be encrypted, not to be encrypted. This is depends on the classification of the data and the regulatory requirements and the sensitivity of the data. Also, we need to keep vigilant, use advanced technologies to proactively identify and hunt down threats. And the threats here, we are talking about different threats, new threats. We might not have enough experience of them, but we need to assess and keep studying those threats and understand and address exponential threats, because as we said, it's an exponential. And yesterday threats, it's not like today and tomorrow threats. It's developing and changing, and sometimes it's difficult to understand the full threats that can be that can impact our technologies and processes. Also, in order to move to the next level of security, we need to keep resilience. To keep resilience here, we are talking about how to get back to the normal situation after any incident or any security impact. Where we found ourselves that we need to develop a threat and situational specific playbook and develop a one response approach. So before we face any threat or incident, we need to understand how to communicate this threat, who must be notified in this threat, if the regulator is required to be notified as well or not, who will share in the investigation, how to capture the logs, who will be responsible to assessing those logs and do the forensic checks. Now I will be moving to the regulatory overview of the cybersecurity, because as we mentioned in this industry, financial institutions and financial markets, banking industry, the regulators they are identifying cyber risk. It's one of the top risks that affect the organizations, and they are focusing on this risk, by the way, and they are issuing different frameworks, regulations, and they are checking from time to time the organization's compliance to those frameworks and the regulations, and sometimes they are performing the inspections, and all organizations, they need to maintain compliance with the regulatory cyber risk frameworks and regulations. So all organizations, they need to understand the regulatory various requirements specified to deal with the cybersecurity and data protection regulations. Because also data protection regulations, sometimes we are not required just to look for our regulators in countries, but we need to look for a different regulators from a different region, like when we are talking about the GDPR, if we are having any clients holding European nationality, how we are dealing with their data, are they aware about how we are dealing with their data, where we are saving their data, in case there is any data breach, how we are notifying the different regulators, and how to maintain a secured and safety data for all our clients and our financial transactions and everything. Cybersecurity risk and compliance. Cybersecurity has become a key focus, as I mentioned earlier, for regulators to ensure compliance and protection, and where, as I mentioned, they might ask for to implement some controls, and they inspect those controls, and they are checking their effectiveness for their required controls on those organizations and industries. Alignment of risk and compliance in the entire process of building business models and partnership in the age of emerging cybersecurity threats. As we mentioned earlier, also any change in the business model or development in the business model, cyber security risk, it needs to be assessed and to be included in the developing the business model, in order to ensure we are implementing a cyber secured and resilient businesses. Those are my slides for today, and I have finished from my side.
Hi, Hala. Thank you so much for the presentation. So we do have a couple of questions.
Please.
Let me start with the first one. Insider attacks and cloud storage are putting customer data at risk. How do we overcome this?
Come again, please.
Insider attacks and cloud storage are putting customer data at risk. How do you overcome this problem?
Yeah, how to overcome those problems? Actually, as I mentioned before, we are moving to cloud. We need to select the best cloud provider. We need to ensure we are implementing the required controls to make sure that our compliant data is secure. We are implementing the encryption on the data, on the database level and the application level. We need to maintain the access rights, and to understand who has access to the data, how we are taking the backup, where do we keep the backup for the cloud, and all those controls.
Okay, thank you. How safe is mobile banking?
How safe is mobile banking? Actually, mobile banking, it's like the online banking, which we are using through the internet. It depends actually in each institution and the level of security applied on the mobile banking. Also, this is required the awareness for our clients that to keep their mobile secured, not to connect to a public network. They need to connect to a secured network. Also, they need to keep scanning their devices, just install applications that is secured applications and available only on the App Store or Google Apps. And not from the internet. Also, the clients, they are required to stay vigilant when they are using their mobile banking. Like if you are, let's say, walking in the street and making and putting your credential, let's say, for the mobile banking, you need to make sure no one is seeing your credentials that you put. But at the end, most of organizations, they are implementing secured mobile applications to initiate financial transactions and to see your financial record. So from the bank side, let's say, they are implementing their controls, but at the same time, the clients, they need to stay vigilant and to secure their devices.
Okay, thank you for that answer. I have one more question. Now, you were talking about constantly having to adopt newer technologies with multiple APIs coming in, and you have to integrate those APIs to your systems. Now, with technology constantly changing, how do you avoid misconfigurations when adopting to newer technology?
Actually, this required some review for the configuration itself, and we need some skilled people who can review the configuration and make sure the applications and APIs configured in a proper manner. Also, we need to understand how it's configured. We need to test our configuration to audit actually our controls if it's implemented during the configuration or not.
Okay, thank you so much for again very detailed answer. So I think we're out of questions. We don't have any more questions. So thank you so much, Hala, for giving us such an insightful presentation about security in the financial industry. So we are very happy to have you on board on behalf of the Reinvent team. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thanks.